Hi, I'm Deb McBride. I'm an astrologer in New York City, and I am here this evening, this lovely Saturday evening in New York City, to discuss the Pisces solar eclipse that will happen on Tuesday evening here on Eastern Standard Time. So it's only Saturday, and there isn't an eclipse until Tuesday. However, we have been feeling this for a while. And I want to talk about the eclipse before the eclipse as opposed to right on the eclipse and, oh, by the way, you should have been paying attention to this all along. But actually, that's not how they work. We start feeling them way in advance. We deal with issues from the last set of eclipses, and eclipses occur twice a year. So 6 months ago, or approximately 6 months ago, we had an eclipse period. And there's a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, and they don't necessarily follow the same order every time. Sometimes the lunar eclipse happens first. This time, the solar eclipse is happening first. And the last bunch of eclipses were in Pisces and Virgo and I think Libra and Aries. But right now, we're dealing specifically with the sign of Pisces, where there is a solar eclipse this Tuesday. So what does that mean? Well, let's start with what an eclipse is. It's when the sun and the moon reach the point of the node, and one of them, usually, for simplicity reasons, one of them outshines the other. So if you're trying to look at a solar eclipse and they tell you not to look at a solar eclipse unless you have negatives or sunglasses or something to put on, be very careful. Really what's happening is the moon is covering the sun. And if you were to go outside and you can see the eclipse, and they're not always visible from where we are, they are often visible at different times of the day in different places. Since it's 9:30 at night when the exact time of the eclipse occurs here in New York, we will not be able to see the eclipse as it happens. It has to be daylight someplace else. So the sun is in the sky and the moon would shadow it and not allow us to see the sun, and it feels like it's getting cloudy, or it looks like it's cloudy, it's going to rain or something. But it's still bright out and the sky is blue. So it's not a rain cloud. It doesn't look like we're going to have rain or snow or anything. It's the moon covering over the sun. And this will occur twice this year. So this is the first one. And what does it feel like to have an eclipse? Eclipses are emotional because it's the sun and the moon is our emotions. It's really who we are. So they are together in the same sign, and that's what happens during a new moon, is that the sun and the moon are together in the same sign. When there's a full moon, they are in opposite signs. And this eclipse would bring forward any sort of Piscean qualities. So the other night, if you tuned in, I talked about Neptune and Pisces. And they are very much about what is not seen, but what is felt, what is in the outer realms and different realms in the world as opposed to, in the universe, as opposed to what's here on Earth and what we can put our feet on and put our hands around. Pisces deals with intangibles. Pisces deals with sensitivity, emotions, feelings of, being here and there, and feelings of boundarylessness. So wherever you have Pisces in your chart, and if you are a Pisces, you will feel this eclipse very surely. Wherever you have Pisces in your chart, this is going to cast a bit of a shadow for a little while, and then eventually, as the day passes, it opens up. Now this means that, say, for example, you thought you were going to a party that night or something, or going to a party, or you were going to be invited to a party, and for a while there it looked like that's not going to happen, and things kind of got confused or weird, but really later on you get the invitation or something. That's a very simple example. What often happens is you feel maybe a little depressed, a little disregarded, dismissed, a little less than, and your feelings you may feel actually a little like your light is hidden, that you don't feel like shining today, that you don't feel like, and this goes for anybody, this isn't just Pisces, wherever Pisces is in your chart. So maybe you don't feel like go to work that day. And then eventually it lifts. It lifts, and it's this moment, but it can be very intense. Now, eclipses are not something that I recommend starting something new on. So there's the solar, there's the lunar, and they come 2 weeks apart. And so I call this eclipse season. During that 2-week period, it's not good to start a new project. Hey, let's open a new boutique. Hey, let's start a new website. Hey, let's start something new between that week. Not something I would say, if you're in rehearsals for a Broadway show or something, I think that's a different story. It's been going on a long time. But the initial process, the initiation of the act, of what the seed would be between the 2 eclipses, that can usually mean it's just going to drop and nothing's going to come of it. So it's important to, with timing, with astrology, always we use astrology for timing to help us gather information and use it for the future and experience what could be fruitful, timing or not. So eclipses are a little strange. They bring a lot of emotions to the table, and things that have been bubbling under the surface and stuff that's not being said, especially emotional stuff. You're feeling stuff, and maybe you don't even know you're feeling it, or you're not defining what you're feeling. Maybe it's indefinable. Pisces is an indefinable sign. Maybe you can't really define something until the eclipse comes. Eclipse is like a bubble that burst. So the balloon gets bigger and bigger, and the feelings get bigger and bigger, and then finally something bursts, and you feel like, wow, that's a release or a relief, and wow, now I feel better because we talked about this. Maybe you and someone have an emotional dynamic going on, and you're trying to work this out or talk about it, and it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening. And then finally the eclipse comes, and all these emotions come to the floodgates. Very interesting. Could happen very easily. It's important to be very aware of what you say during an eclipse, because we can let our emotions get carried away and take us someplace that we don't want to say things about. We might tell a secret. Pisces is hidden stuff. Sometimes we might burst open and tell a secret that we shouldn't have said anything about. Sometimes with eclipses, they bring to the table stuff we've really been avoiding. Like if you're married and you and your husband or you and your wife have to talk about something, and it's just not an attractive subject or something that's been brewing in the relationship that needs to be spoken about. Married, not married, any relationship. This is often the time when it comes forward. And, you can't hide things for too long. You can't avoid things forever. Sometimes things just come to the surface during an eclipse, and it brings forward something very fruitful, and the conversation happens, and the air is cleared. And that's very good. That's very positive. We like this. That's the good part of the eclipse. That's when it's not stressing us out. What I find the most common experience of the eclipse is that things get really, really busy, and people just can't keep up. It's just too intense, too much. And it's temporary. It doesn't go on for the whole, 6 months or whatever between eclipses. It's if your life is that way anyway, just prepare for it to get more intense. And you just have to keep up with it. Sometimes you have been working, and it's just, and then at the eclipse, you think you're getting a break, and then you get sick, you get a cold. That happens too. It's just one of those bubble has burst, pin in the balloon experiences where everything just kind of comes to the table. And I think that the most important thing is just to kind of keep aware. It's not something where you can control what happens. It's not a controlling kind of aspect. You have to really be conscientious of what's happening and not lash out at people, not let the irritability of the eclipse dictate for you how you're feeling, not let you give your power away. The important thing is that you are just sort of keeping your head together, and you're feeling like your emotions are intact. what often begins at the new moon concludes at the full moon. So the first eclipse may bring a situation to light that concludes at the full moon. Maybe there's a new job you have to do at work, and it starts at the beginning and then it ends with the full moon, which is the lunar eclipse in a couple of weeks. And this is really something where I think, you just sort of it's nice and neat, and it's in a little package, and you don't have to get all riled up about it. But often I was walking down the street in Brooklyn the other day, and I heard two different people at two different times screaming into their phone and really having an argument with someone on the other end, and it sounded heated and it sounded difficult, and people were cursing, and I thought, it's eclipse season. This is what happens. Heated emotions. The sun and the moon are heated up. We get heated up. And it's not always horrible or miserable. Sometimes things we've been really waiting to pop happen for us. Maybe we've been looking for a new job. Maybe we're searching, and finally the breakthrough comes. So eclipses can bring epiphanies. They could bring breakthroughs. They could bring exciting new times. And something new and wonderful could happen during an eclipse. And we can feel like we are actually getting something accomplished, and then the air clears. And I often find when we're in the eclipse period, we look at it and say, you know what, I'm really glad that happened. I'm glad that conversation happened. I'm glad that we had that talk. The air is cleared. I feel so much better. And usually after the eclipses are over, we can breathe a sigh of relief. I really feel that. I feel that all the time, that we can breathe that sigh of relief. 2 weeks ago, we had a full moon. And that full moon was the beginning, the opening of the door of the eclipse period. And what happens in that time is that the door swings open and the emotions start to rise, and they start to brew, and they start to stew, and we start feeling that we are having that eclipse experience. And it's like, what is this? I wasn't like this last week. Yeah, well, here it is. The steam is rising. The emotions are happening. The lava is churning in the volcano, and that definitely can be volcanic. But this is in Pisces. Hello. This is in Pisces, and it's not something where I feel that it's in a position right now where it's stressing with the other planets. Eclipses can be stressful. Sometimes we don't sleep on them. We go to bed that night and we're wide awake because the energy is so intense. So be aware of that. If you find you're not sleeping, try to calm yourself down before you're going to sleep. Do some meditation, do some nice exercise, stretch, watch a nice happy film or TV show, read a good book, do things to keep yourself calm in that time before you go to sleep, because they can be like, just, you're wide awake, you're wired, and it's fine. I think that the best thing that people can do is just sort of be mindful of this, and just be mindful of behavior and what's going on. Looking around at the world, there are things that pop during that time. Sometimes we see a lot of people leaving the earth then. Sometimes we see people dying. And sometimes we read in the paper that someone who might have been sick for a long time passed away, or someone in our family. It doesn't mean somebody's going to die. It just means that if someone's going that way anyway, it's very likely that that's when they exit and they're done. And that also can happen during eclipses. But I think what's really interesting is that we know what's been going on in our life in the last few months and the last few weeks. And perhaps something started on a new moon we had for you. And we had a particularly powerful new moon back in January because it was with Pluto. And anything that happened then might get stirred up now. Pluto and Capricorn can stir things up a lot. So something got stirred up in January, and this is sort of responding to that in a similar way, because it's in a sextile, or what is a harmonious 60-degree aspect between this new moon and the new moon back in January with Pluto. So I tend to think something, and that's a smooth aspect, so I tend to think something may continue that story a little bit. So think back to January and what that story was about. And I also feel like when I talk to people about eclipses, we have to look at where it is in their chart. So if you are a Pisces, it is going to be in your sign, and it might be something very energizing for you. If you're a Virgo, it's going to be the opposite. So it's going to be opposite the people who are in your life. It'll be you and them. You're the Virgo, everything's happening in Pisces house, which is opposite Virgo. Wherever that is, that's other people. That's your partner, your spouse, your business partner, somebody opposite. The person you look across the table at. And we are experiencing a Jupiter transit in Virgo right now. And this eclipse is opposite Jupiter, which is an interesting relationship. Jupiter's abundance. Jupiter is something where you can open the door and have an opportunity. Jupiter is what takes us to travel and experience. So I think that this is going to be a pretty open and positive eclipse. It's intense. It doesn't mean it's not going to be intense. For sure, there will be that. But there could be something very emotionally positive that gets resolved during this time with another person. Maybe you're seeing someone new and they're going to tell you they love you. Maybe you are, thinking of a business partnership and the right person agrees to work with you. Maybe you're getting married or getting engaged. Those very positive things can happen with an eclipse. I think that they are intense in many ways and that we don't always appreciate the power of them. So I was talking about Pisces, I was talking about Virgo. Sagittarius is also a mutable sign, and Sagittarius and Gemini get affected by this as well. So if you're a Sagittarius, you're born in late November or December, or you're a Gemini born in late May, June, you are going to get this in a little bit of a stressful aspect to your sun. So that's something that's a little bit stressful maybe for you. For Gemini, it's really much later, and it's going to be around their career house that this would be. This would be joining them in their career house. So it might be something career-wise that happens for Gemini, where Sagittarius, it might be something in their home that happens. They are, what time is it now in New York? It's 10:04 p.m. And, the exciting thing about an eclipse is that you don't know what's going to happen. I can sit here and list 100 things, and it's not really going to tell us what happens exactly to you. So, Sagittarius would be something with your home or your family. Maybe someone in your family buys a new home. Maybe you're buying a new home. That could happen. But it's a life-changing thing. Eclipses, things are not the same after eclipses happen. Things are not, it's not, the time difference in New York and Miami is the same. There isn't any. Things are not the same after eclipses. Eclipses do clear the air. They do clear the table. You're on a new playing field after an eclipse. So you have to kind of agree that this is a new playing field and sort of understand it. We shift consciousness during an eclipse, and that is something that you should look forward to. Other signs that will benefit from this eclipse are ones that are in harmonious with the sign of Pisces, which are Cancer and Scorpio. So if you're born under one of those water signs, as Pisces is a water sign, this is a very positive experience. It creates a triangle in your chart, and an eclipse is usually opening the door for those people. Somebody who has Pisces in their chart, but also Cancer, Scorpio. This is an opportunity because it's an opportunity aspect, so it's very good. People also might getting a little bit, I had mentioned Gemini, Sagittarius, a little bit stressed, a little bit awkward for people would be Aquarius, because it's the adjacent sign to Pisces. Unless the Aquarius has planets in Pisces. The sign after Pisces is Aries. It's a little bit awkward for them too. It might affect the sleep or the dreams of an Aries. Especially them, they may be awake. They're fire, so they're alive anyway. But Pisces with Capricorn is actually very good, and Capricorns will experience this eclipse as actually something harmonious, unless they have a stressful aspect to where the eclipse falls, which is 19 degrees of Pisces. And it's Tuesday night. Tuesday night is the eclipse. That's the first eclipse. Tuesday night, 9:30 in New York. So it's very much about your experience and what has been happening for you. Pay attention to what's been going on in your life in these last few weeks. That's how you know what's going to hit the eclipse. If it's been work, you're worried about work, it's going to be work related. If you're having some relationship and you're having some difficulties and you're not communicating, you can bet you're going to start communicating after Tuesday. I think that we feel eclipses when the aspect before happens, the lunation before happens, which was 2 weeks ago. And this is, the culmination of what's been going on in these last weeks. If you experience the eclipse, the most intense time, now this is another thing. I tell people not to, eclipse can bring better energy, but they can bring some volatile energy, which is why I tell people to be very careful about what they say during an eclipse. Our emotions can get ahead of us. Our emotions can come out and we say things we regret. Just think before you speak and be aware of how you're feeling and aware of your stresses, because we can really feel stressed out. Too many things happen. Anything can happen, but if you have been experiencing, like I said, something in particular in these last weeks, you can bet that that's got something to do with it. And so now it's Saturday night, and really it will heat up, and the events will start to take place tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday. Then there'll be like Wednesday, Thursday, you'll start to feel it as well. So I tell people not to, don't schedule something, like I try not to schedule things like a surgical procedure or anything important on an eclipse. Try to avoid scheduling it that day. It's just too much energy. Too many people are feeling too tense and it's too excitable. So I think the best thing to do is, try to move forward with your life and just do your average everyday things. Stuff is going to happen anyway. Pisces people are prone to letting things roll off their back. They're very sensitive, but they are not necessarily people who are plugged into what's an interview in this eclipse. Okay, well, you got to go forward with life. You have to go forward. You can't just say, I'm going to change this because of the eclipse. It's just, you do it and you go forward. And maybe you'll be really surprised on the eclipse and you'll have something new and exciting will happen, a new job. But, you do the best you can. So Pisces don't always tune into these things. You are programming yourself for the better. Everybody is trying to program themselves for the better right now. One would hope. I think that, sometimes some terrible things happen on eclipses, unfortunately. We hear bad stories in the news. There's always going to be some bad story in the news, but sometimes something unreasonable and unusual happens in the news and sad. So, eclipses, it's when someone's head loses their head during an eclipse. And like I was been warning this whole time I'm talking, it's really important to not lose your head, to not let your emotions run away with you. This is not the time to do that. It's time to kind of keep your head on straight if you're able to do that. And I was getting back to Pisces. Pisces does not always feel things. I had a Pisces friend who there was an eclipse and it was intense and it was crazy and it was in Pisces and it was a bunch of years ago. And she said, oh yeah, it was a very quiet week. And I was like, really? Everybody else is tearing their hair out this week. Yeah, it was just a quiet week. It was an eclipse that was very stressed to things like Saturn and Mars, which were intense moments. The eclipse in 2 weeks is the lunar eclipse, and it's on the 23rd. And that is when, the sun and the moon meet in a full moon. And sometimes you see, if it's visible by you, you'll see that it's the sun sort of takes a little bite out of the moon. That's always fun to watch. And that is not in the sign of Pisces. That's when we go into early Aries. It's right after the solstice. So the sun will be in Aries and the moon will be in Libra. So anyone out there who is Aries Libra is going to get a good dose of the second eclipse, and that's lunar. So that is definitely about relationships. It's definitely about the one-to-one, especially because Libra, where the eclipse occurs, where the moon will be, Libra is all about relationships. Libra is all about you and I and the other. They're always, we know them as the balance, always about their relationship with other people. And it is always very important for them to have balance in their relationships. And they seek balance. They're uncomfortable if they don't have balance. And they don't always feel balanced. They're always very aware when the scales are tipping in the other person's direction. And they are always seeking to bring it back into balance. Though they don't like confrontation, Libras, the opposite sign Aries is very good at handling confrontation, and they're very direct. So they have something to learn from each other. Libra learns how to confront and how to be direct and not beat around the bush and not harbor anxieties and tensions and frustrations with other people and anger, because they don't express anger as well as an Aries does. Aries, no problem getting angry. But Aries is very direct and says, I need to talk to you, and this is what we need to deal with. And Aries needs to learn a little diplomacy from Libra and being a little more gentle in the delivery of what they have to say, and to be balanced and fair in things. Whereas they're seeing it from their perspective, they have to be able to see it from both. So they learn from each other, as all signs do, especially opposite signs. So the second eclipse is really about the relationships between people, and your one-to-one personal ones, especially marriage, relations, business partners, anything that's one-to-one like that. So it's very important. Between the two, I think there's going to be some very interesting events, and we are definitely going to see the first of this stuff on Tuesday. So I think that's it for now. My name's Deb McBride. I'm an astrologer in New York City and Brooklyn, and my website is debmcbride.com. So if you'd like to read more, I have a blog, and I'll probably be writing about the eclipse in the next few days. Thanks so much.